Chapter 1. There's a quiet difference between a woman who likes you and a woman who genuinely loves you, and most men don't notice it until it's too late. Liking is loud at first. It's playful, flirtatious, exciting, and full of sparks. Love is quieter. Love doesn't announce itself with constant validation or dramatic gestures. Love shows up in consistency, in protection, in the way her behavior stays steady when the novelty wears off. That's why so many men get confused. They chase the excitement and call it love, and then they're shocked when it disappears. Real love doesn't disappear. It settles in and proves itself over time. When a woman truly loves you, she doesn't treat you like a source of entertainment. She treats you like a priority. That doesn't mean she revolves her life around you or loses her independence. It means you feel considered in her decisions. You feel respected in her choices. You feel chosen without having to ask for reassurance. A man in this position doesn't wake up wondering where he stands. He doesn't feel like he has to compete. He doesn't feel like he's walking on emotional landmines. There's a sense of emotional safety that's hard to describe, but impossible to fake. A lot of men watching this have experienced the opposite. They've dealt with women who kept them guessing, women who loved attention more than connection, women who said the right things, but moved in ways that created anxiety. That's why this topic matters. Not to sell fantasy, not to promise perfection, but to help you recognize the difference between real love and temporary affection, so you stop pouring your energy into women who were never truly invested. When a woman genuinely loves you, one of the first things that changes is how she handles your presence in her life. You're not a convenience, you're not a fallback, you're not someone she talks to when she's bored. You become part of her rhythm. She checks in naturally, not out of obligation. She wants to know how your day went, not to collect information, but because your inner world matters to her. That curiosity doesn't disappear after the honeymoon phase. It deepens. She doesn't just ask how work was. She asks how you're feeling. She notices when something is off and doesn't ignore it. Picture a man who's been in 2 relationships back to back. In the first one, his phone buzzes constantly at the beginning. She's excited, she's affectionate, she's expressive. But the moment he gets busy, the moment life demands his focus, the warmth fades. She becomes distant. She seeks attention elsewhere. He feels pressure to perform just to keep her engaged. In the second relationship, the pace is calmer. There's still attraction, but there's also stability. When he's stressed, she doesn't pull away. She leans in. When he's quiet, she doesn't assume the worst. She gives him space without disappearing. That second woman isn't just interested. She's invested. This is where a lot of men misunderstand love, because they've been trained to equate intensity with depth. They think butterflies mean loyalty. They think jealousy means care. They think drama means passion. But real love doesn't need chaos to feel alive. Real love feels grounded. It feels like you can breathe. It feels like you don't have to constantly prove your worth to keep her attention. And that feeling is rare because it requires emotional maturity, not just attraction. Think about the moments where you felt most at peace with a woman. Not the moments where your heart was racing, but the moments where you felt understood. The moments where you could be yourself without fear of losing her. The moments where you didn't feel like you were being evaluated. Those moments are closer to real love than any intense spark ever was. And when a woman genuinely loves you, she creates more of those moments, not fewer. Another subtle but powerful sign of genuine love is how she speaks about you when you're not around. A woman who truly loves you protects your image. She doesn't embarrass you publicly. She doesn't vent about you to people who don't respect the relationship. She doesn't flirt with the idea of being single while still calling herself committed. She understands that love is not just about how she feels in private, but how she represents the relationship in public. That level of respect doesn't come from fear. It comes from care. Men who have never experienced this often mistake control for love. They think if a woman gets jealous or possessive, it means she cares deeply. But jealousy without respect is insecurity, not love. A woman who genuinely loves you doesn't try to control you. She trusts you. And that trust is not blind. It's built on the way you both show up consistently. Trust grows when actions align with words over time. It doesn't come from emotional spikes or dramatic declarations. If you're watching this and realizing you've been settling for confusion, like the video because clarity saves men years of wasted effort. Not to hype the channel, but because understanding love changes how you choose. Subscribe to Love Delusion, because this space is about helping men stop romanticizing chaos and start valuing peace. Share this with a friend who keeps chasing women who don't choose him fully, because sometimes hearing the truth from someone else hits harder. If you've ever felt like you were trying harder than she was, if you've ever felt like you were carrying the emotional weight of the relationship alone, if you've ever felt anxious instead of secure, those are not signs of deep love. They're signs of imbalance. Genuine love feels mutual. It feels like effort flows both ways without negotiation. You don't have to beg for consistency. You don't have to decode mixed signals. You don't have to compete with her phone or her past or other men. There's also a difference in how conflict shows up. When a woman truly loves you, conflict doesn't turn into a power struggle. She doesn't try to win. She tries to understand. That doesn't mean she never gets emotional or upset. It means she doesn't weaponize conflict to punish you. She doesn't threaten the relationship to gain leverage. She doesn't disappear to make you anxious. She wants resolution, not dominance. That mindset is rare, but it's one of the clearest indicators that her love is real. This chapter isn't meant to make you idolize women or believe love should be effortless. Relationships still require work. People still make mistakes. But there's a baseline of respect, consistency, and care that separates genuine love from temporary attachment. And once you learn to recognize it, you stop chasing what looks exciting and start choosing what actually lasts. Chapter 2. One of the clearest differences between attraction and genuine love is how a woman behaves when she doesn't have to try anymore. When attraction is the driving force, effort is front-loaded. She shows up strong in the beginning, says the right things, mirrors your energy, and makes you feel like you're the center of her world. But once she feels secure, once she believes she has you, that effort slowly fades. Not because she's evil, but because attraction alone doesn't sustain intention. Love does. When a woman genuinely loves you, effort doesn't disappear after comfort sets in. It changes shape. It becomes quieter, more practical, and more consistent. She doesn't perform for you, she supports you. She doesn't chase emotional highs, she builds emotional safety. And most men miss this because they're still looking for fireworks when what they should be looking for is stability. There's a moment in every real relationship where excitement gives way to routine. That moment is where truth shows up. A woman who only liked you starts pulling away once the novelty fades. She needs new stimulation. She needs new validation. She needs new excitement. A woman who loves you settles in and deepens the bond. She becomes more patient with your flaws. She becomes more invested in your long-term well-being. She starts thinking in terms of we without having to announce it. Imagine a man who loses his job unexpectedly. In one relationship, the woman becomes distant almost immediately. She grows cold. She stops being affectionate. She starts questioning the relationship. She subtly begins detaching because the situation no longer benefits her emotionally or socially. In another relationship, the woman responds differently. She doesn't panic. She doesn't withdraw. She checks in. She asks how he's holding up. She encourages him without making him feel weak. She doesn't shame him for struggling. That difference isn't personality. It's love. A woman who genuinely loves you doesn't disappear when life gets uncomfortable. She doesn't view your struggles as inconveniences. She understands that partnership includes seasons where one person carries more weight, That doesn't mean she sacrifices herself or ignores her needs, but it does mean she doesn't abandon you emotionally when you're not at your best. And that's something attraction alone can never replicate. Think about how it feels when someone stands with you during a low moment. Not with pity, not with pressure, just presence. That presence changes how you experience difficulty. It makes you feel less alone. It makes you feel seen. And when a woman loves you, she offers that presence naturally. You don't have to ask for it. You don't have to earn it through performance. She gives it because your state matters to her. Another overlooked sign of genuine love is how she handles your boundaries. A woman who only likes you pushes against your limits. She tests what she can get away with. She frames boundaries as control. She gets defensive when you say no. A woman who loves you may not always agree with your boundaries, but she respects them. She understands that your standards are part of who you are. She doesn't try to shame you into abandoning them. She doesn't punish you emotionally for having them. This is where a lot of men get confused because they've been taught that love means compromise without limits. But healthy love includes mutual respect for individuality. When a woman loves you, she doesn't try to reshape you into something easier to manage. She wants you strong, grounded, and self-directed. She may challenge you, but she doesn't try to erode your identity. That's a major difference between a woman who loves you and a woman who simply enjoys the benefits you provide. Another subtle but powerful behavior is how she responds to your success. When attraction is shallow, success creates distance. She becomes competitive. She becomes insecure. She starts subtly cutting you down or questioning your choices. When love is real, your success makes her proud. She celebrates it without turning it into a comparison. She doesn't feel threatened by your growth. She feels connected to it. You can see this clearly in long-term couples. A woman who loves her man doesn't resent his ambition. She supports it. She understands that his drive is part of what makes him who he is. She doesn't try to slow him down so she can feel more secure. She adjusts and grows alongside him. That dynamic doesn't come from attraction. It comes from alignment. There's also something important to understand about communication. When a woman genuinely loves you, communication doesn't feel like a constant negotiation. You're not always explaining yourself. You're not always defending your intentions. You're not always trying to clarify where you stand. There's an underlying understanding that allows conversations to flow without tension. That doesn't mean you never disagree. It means disagreement doesn't threaten the relationship. A woman who loves you doesn't use communication as a weapon. She doesn't withhold affection to gain leverage. She doesn't disappear to make you anxious. She doesn't test your loyalty by creating jealousy. She wants peace more than power. And that preference alone tells you how emotionally invested she really is. Chapter 3. There's a moment in every relationship where temptation enters the room. Not loudly, not dramatically. It slips in quietly through attention, opportunity, or convenience. Another man shows interest. An old flame reappears. Social media opens doors that never existed before. This is the moment where attraction gets exposed and love gets tested. And the way a woman behaves here tells you more than anything she could ever say. When a woman genuinely loves you, she protects the relationship instinctively. She doesn't flirt back just to feel desired. She doesn't keep doors cracked for later. She doesn't justify gray areas by calling them harmless. She doesn't need to explore what else is out there because she already knows what she has. That doesn't mean she's blind to attention. It means attention doesn't control her. Her loyalty isn't based on convenience. It's based on choice. A woman who only likes you handles temptation differently. She enjoys it. She rationalizes it. She frames it as innocent. She tells herself it doesn't mean anything. She might even tell you it doesn't mean anything. But internally, she's feeding something that shouldn't be fed. And once that door's open emotionally, it's only a matter of time before it becomes physical or creates distance between you. That's not because she's malicious. It's because her attachment to you isn't strong enough to override her need for validation. Let's step outside the usual framing and picture something subtle. A woman receives a message from a man she knows is interested. She pauses before responding. That pause matters. In that pause is a decision. A woman who loves you closes the app. She deletes the message. She doesn't respond politely. She doesn't keep it friendly. She doesn't entertain curiosity. She shuts it down because protecting the relationship matters more than being liked. A woman who doesn't love you responds just enough to keep the energy alive, not because she plans to cheat, but because she likes knowing she could. That difference is everything. Imagine two women in identical situations. Both are in relationships. Both receive attention from another man. One woman mentions it casually to her partner, not to provoke jealousy, but because transparency is natural to her. She doesn't hide it. She doesn't protect the attention. She doesn't feel ownership over it. The other woman keeps it private. She enjoys the secret. She tells herself it's not worth mentioning because it's nothing. But secrets are rarely nothing. Secrets are seeds. When a woman genuinely loves you, she doesn't create emotional backups. She doesn't keep men in orbit. She doesn't maintain connections that could threaten the relationship later. She understands that love isn't just about how she feels when things are good. It's about how she acts when temptation appears. That level of discipline doesn't come from fear. It comes from value. She values the relationship enough to protect it proactively. If you've ever been with a woman who became defensive when you brought up boundaries around other men, that's information. A woman who loves you doesn't feel attacked by boundaries. She feels reassured by them. She understands they exist to protect the connection, not to control her. When boundaries are met with resistance instead of understanding, it usually means something in her behavior doesn't align with commitment. Another powerful sign of genuine love is how she speaks about loyalty when no one is forcing the conversation. A woman who loves you doesn't need to be convinced that cheating is wrong. She doesn't need loyalty framed as a rule. It's already part of her identity. She doesn't glamorize being wanted by others. She doesn't joke about having options. She doesn't flirt with the idea of being single while still in a relationship. Her loyalty is quiet because it's internal, not performative. Think about how it feels when someone chooses you, even when it would be easy not to. When they don't need supervision. When they don't need reminders. When they don't need fear to stay aligned. That feeling creates safety. And safety is what allows a man to relax into a relationship without constantly guarding his heart. There's also a protective instinct that shows up when love is real. A woman who loves you doesn't just protect the relationship from other men. She protects you emotionally. She doesn't embarrass you in front of others. She doesn't share your weaknesses with people who don't care about you. She doesn't use your vulnerabilities as ammunition during conflict. She understands that loving you means safeguarding your dignity as much as her own. This is where many men realize they've been confusing affection with love. Affection feels good. Love feels safe. Affection can disappear when circumstances change. Love adapts and stays present. Affection can coexist with disloyalty. Love cannot. When a woman genuinely loves you, her loyalty shows up without negotiation. You don't have to monitor her behavior. You don't have to decode her intentions. You don't have to worry about what happens when you're not around. Her actions remain consistent because her values don't shift with opportunity. Chapter 4. One of the strongest indicators that a woman genuinely loves you is how she takes responsibility when things go wrong. Not perfection, not flawless behavior, but accountability. Love shows up when ego steps aside. A woman who truly loves you doesn't twist reality to avoid blame. She doesn't rewrite history to make herself the victim every time there's conflict. She doesn't turn every issue into a courtroom where she's fighting to be right. She cares more about repair than winning. That mindset is rare, and when you experience it, you feel the difference immediately. In relationships where love is shallow, conflict becomes a game of defense. She denies. She deflects, she minimizes, she brings up unrelated issues to avoid dealing with the current one. You walk away from conversations feeling confused instead of resolved. But when a woman genuinely loves you, conflict has a different tone. Even when emotions run high, there's an underlying desire to restore connection. She might need time to process. She might get defensive briefly. But she comes back. She reflects. She owns her part without being forced to. That return matters more than the initial reaction. Imagine a couple going through a misunderstanding. In one scenario, the woman refuses to admit fault. She frames everything as the man's problem. She stonewalls. She withdraws affection until he gives in. In the other scenario, the woman takes a breath, thinks about what happened, and comes back with honesty. She says she didn't handle it well. She explains her emotions without blaming. She asks how to fix it together. The difference between those two responses isn't communication skill, it's love. Another place genuine love reveals itself is in effort that doesn't ask for credit. A woman who loves you doesn't keep score. She doesn't constantly remind you of what she does for you. She doesn't weaponize her effort during arguments. She gives because she wants the relationship to thrive, not because she wants leverage. Her actions aren't transactional, they're intentional. This shows up in everyday moments. She remembers things that matter to you. She follows through on small promises. She supports your goals even when they don't benefit her immediately. She shows up when it's inconvenient. She doesn't need applause for caring. She cares because she's invested. Think about how it feels when someone does something for you quietly, not to be noticed, not to be praised, just because they know it will help you. That feeling creates trust, and trust is the foundation of love. When a woman genuinely loves you, she contributes to your life in ways that make it better, not more complicated. Another subtle sign is how she handles your growth. When love is real, growth is welcomed, not resisted. A woman who loves you doesn't feel threatened when you improve. She doesn't try to keep you small so she can feel secure. She encourages your progress. She adapts as you change. She understands that stagnation kills relationships faster than conflict ever will. In unhealthy dynamics, growth creates tension. She questions your ambition. She jokes about your goals. She becomes passive-aggressive when you invest time in yourself. That behavior doesn't come from love. It comes from insecurity. Love wants expansion. Love wants evolution. Love doesn't fear losing control because it's built on mutual respect. There's also a difference in how future plans are treated. When attraction is shallow, the future is vague. Plans are avoided. Conversations about long-term direction feel uncomfortable. She keeps things open-ended so she doesn't feel locked in. But when a woman genuinely loves you, the future becomes natural. She talks about it without pressure. She includes you in her vision. She doesn't treat commitment like a trap. She treats it like alignment. This doesn't mean rushing milestones or forcing timelines. It means there's a sense of continuity. You're not just part of her present, you're part of her thinking. She considers how decisions affect both of you. She doesn't act single while calling herself committed. Her actions reflect long-term awareness. Another powerful sign is how she responds when you assert yourself. A woman who loves you doesn't punish you for having a spine. She doesn't withdraw affection because you disagreed. She doesn't frame your confidence as arrogance. She respects your ability to lead your own life. Even when she doesn't agree, she respects the way you stand on your values. This is important because many men confuse compliance with love. They think if a woman goes along with everything, it means she cares. But real love respects individuality. A woman who loves you doesn't want you passive. She wants you grounded. She wants you decisive. She wants you self-directed. That energy makes her feel safe, not threatened. Now, let's look at a quiet but critical behavior. When a woman genuinely loves you, she doesn't keep you in emotional suspense. She doesn't disappear to gain leverage. She doesn't use silence as punishment. She communicates when she needs space and returns when she's ready. She doesn't enjoy making you anxious. Your emotional state matters to her. Men who have only experienced emotionally inconsistent women often don't realize how peaceful this feels. They're used to highs and lows. They're used to unpredictability. They mistake anxiety for excitement. But once you experience consistency, it's hard to go back, because consistency feels like safety, and safety allows love to deepen instead of burn out. Another thing worth noting is how she treats your time. A woman who loves you respects your schedule. She doesn't guilt you for having responsibilities. She doesn't compete with your purpose. She understands that your time has value. And because she respects your time, she becomes more intentional with hers. That mutual respect creates balance. As we move toward the final chapter, it's important to understand that genuine love isn't flashy. It doesn't look like constant romance or nonstop excitement. It looks like stability, effort, protection, and consistency. It looks like someone choosing you when it's easy and when it's not. And once you know how to recognize that, you stop settling for anything less. Chapter 5. By the time a man truly understands what genuine love looks like, he's usually already been through the opposite. He's experienced confusion disguised as passion. He's experienced inconsistency disguised as mystery. He's experienced effort that only showed up when it was convenient. And because of that, when real love finally appears, it can feel unfamiliar. It can even feel boring at first, not because it lacks depth, but because it lacks chaos. That's why this chapter matters. Because recognizing genuine love is only half the work. The other half is learning how to choose it without self-sabotage. When a woman genuinely loves you, she doesn't make you prove yourself over and over again. She doesn't put your worth on trial every time there's tension. She doesn't require constant performance to keep her engaged. There's a baseline of acceptance that allows you to relax into who you are. That doesn't mean she stops challenging you or expecting growth. It means the challenge comes from a place of belief, not from doubt. She challenges you because she sees your potential, not because she's unsure about your value. This is where many men get it wrong. They mistake struggle for depth. They think if something feels difficult, it must be meaningful. But healthy love doesn't drain you. It strengthens you. It doesn't leave you questioning yourself. It sharpens your clarity. A woman who loves you doesn't add unnecessary friction to your life. She reduces it. She becomes someone you can move forward with, not someone you constantly have to manage emotionally. Imagine waking up next to someone and not feeling tension in your chest. You're not bracing for mood swings. You're not replaying conversations in your head. You're not wondering if today will be good or bad. There's a sense of steadiness. That steadiness allows you to focus on your mission, your health, your growth. And the woman beside you isn't competing with those things. She's aligned with them. That alignment is one of the strongest signs of real love. A woman who genuinely loves you doesn't require you to shrink to keep her comfortable. She doesn't guilt you for having ambition. She doesn't frame your discipline as emotional distance. She understands that a man with direction is a man worth building with. And instead of trying to redirect your focus toward her insecurity, she works on herself so she can stand beside you without resentment. Think of two men in relationships. One man constantly adjusts himself to keep his woman happy. He filters his words. He limits his growth. He walks on eggshells to avoid conflict. The other man stays grounded. He speaks honestly. He holds his standards. He grows without apology. The first man might keep his relationship longer, but the second man builds a stronger one. Because love that requires self-erasure isn't love, it's dependency. When a woman genuinely loves you, she doesn't threaten the relationship during conflict. She doesn't use breakup language as leverage. She doesn't disappear to make you chase. She doesn't test your attachment by creating insecurity. She wants resolution, not dominance. She wants the relationship to feel safe, not volatile. That emotional safety is something men rarely talk about. But once you experience it, you realize how exhausting instability really was. There's also something important about how genuine love ages. Attraction fades if it's not supported by deeper connection. Love evolves. It becomes more patient, more understanding, more forgiving. A woman who loves you doesn't expect you to be perfect. She expects you to be real. And because she's not chasing an idealized version of you, she's less likely to become disappointed when reality shows up. This is where trust comes in. Trust isn't just about fidelity. It's about emotional reliability. Knowing that when you speak, you'll be heard. Knowing that when you struggle, you won't be abandoned. Knowing that when you succeed, you won't be resented. That kind of trust allows a man to give his best without fear. And a woman who loves you wants that version of you, not a watered-down one. Another key element of genuine love is how it handles time. A woman who loves you isn't rushing to extract value from you. She's not pressuring outcomes before alignment exists. She's patient because she's confident in what you're building together. That patience doesn't come from passivity. It comes from trust. She trusts the direction of the relationship because she trusts your character. Men often overlook this because they've been conditioned to believe pressure equals commitment. But real commitment doesn't feel forced. It feels chosen. And when commitment is chosen, it lasts longer because it's rooted in intention, not fear. As this video comes to a close, the most important takeaway is this. Genuine love is not something you chase. It's something you recognize and allow. You don't have to convince a woman to love you deeply. You don't have to perform endlessly. You don't have to compete for her attention. When it's real, it meets you halfway and stays there. If you've spent years tolerating mixed signals, inconsistency, or emotional games, it can feel uncomfortable to accept something stable. You might even feel the urge to sabotage it because chaos feels familiar. But familiarity is not the same as health. Growth often feels unfamiliar at first. Love that is real may feel quieter than what you're used to, but it's also stronger. So the question isn't whether women are capable of genuine love. Many are. The question is whether you're willing to stop chasing illusions long enough to recognize it when it shows up. Whether you're willing to hold standards that filter out confusion. Whether you're willing to choose peace over excitement. Because the man who chooses peace positions himself to receive love that lasts. If this video gave you clarity, like it because clarity changes how men choose. Subscribe to Love Delusion because this channel exists to help you see relationships without delusion. Share this with someone who's still confusing chaos with connection, and comment peace if you're ready to stop settling and start choosing relationships that actually support the man you're becoming.